The bridge of the UES Defiance hummed with an almost imperceptible tension. Scorch marks from previous encounters traced intricate patterns along the interior bulkheads, each mark a testament to the ship's long and complicated history. Captain Rachel Thompson knew every inch of this vessel, not just from service records, but from personal experience that ran deeper than any official log could capture. Outside the reinforced viewports, the Orion frontier stretched like an endless canvas of darkness, punctuated by distant stellar clusters. Most considered this region a cosmic backwater, a posting reserved for ships and crews that had fallen out of favor. The Defiance embodied that reputation, a vessel cobbled together from spare parts, her hull a mosaic of repairs that spoke more to resourcefulness than elegance. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez adjusted the long-range sensor array, his fingers dancing across interfaces that had been modified and remodified so many times they barely resembled their original design. He'd spent the last 3 years on this ship, learning its quirks, understanding its soul. The sensor display flickered, not the smooth, crisp projection of a modern warship, but a temperamental interface that required as much intuition as technical skill. "Captain," he called out, a note of uncertainty threading through his professional tone. "I'm detecting something unusual." Rachel Thompson turned, her cybernetic eye, a replacement from a combat incident 15 years ago, automatically switching to enhanced scanning mode. The artificial optic moved independently of her organic eye, a constant reminder of humanity's capacity to adapt and survive. The sensor reading was unlike anything in the standard Galactic database. Quantum signatures twisted and folded in patterns that defied conventional understanding. Most captains would have logged the anomaly and continued their patrol. Rachel Thompson was not most captains. "Magnify Sector 9 Delta," she commanded. The ship's central display shifted, revealing a microscopic distortion in the fabric of space. It was barely larger than a molecular disruption, the kind of anomaly that would go unnoticed by less experienced crews. But Rachel had learned long ago that the universe's most significant moments often began with the smallest of signs. Chief Engineer Michael Bryant entered the bridge, a steaming cup of synthetic coffee in his hand. His uniform was a mismatched collection of standard issue and custom-modified components, much like the ship itself. "Another quiet day in the cosmic middle of nowhere?" he asked, more a statement than a question. Before Rachel could respond, the quantum anomaly exploded. Space itself seemed to tear open, revealing a geometry of darkness that human minds were never meant to comprehend. Alien vessels emerge, not gradually, but with a suddenness that violated every known law of physical transition. They were living machines, biomechanical constructs that seemed to breathe and pulse with an intelligence far beyond mechanical understanding. The Nexus Collective had arrived. Hundreds of ships materialized in perfect synchronization, their obsidian hulls reflecting zero light, absorbing the surrounding space like living shadows. Each vessel was a mathematically perfect construct, designed with a precision that made human engineering look like primitive sketches. A communication burst erupted across all frequencies. The message was direct, emotionless, absolute. "Inferior species. Prepare for assimilation." Lieutenant Rodriguez's hands flew across the console. Multiple targeting locks. Their charging weapon systems unlike anything in our database. Energy signatures are off the charts. Michael Bryant moved to an auxiliary station, his fingers already rewiring emergency power conduits. "Those aren't just weapons," he muttered. "They're complete reality manipulation systems." Captain Thompson remained impossibly calm. Her cybernetic eye calculated trajectories, potential escape vectors, combat probabilities. The numbers were not encouraging. The Defiance was outnumbered 500 to 1, a single human vessel facing a fleet that had systematically conquered entire galactic civilizations. But something burned in Rachel Thompson's eyes, a defiance that no technological superiority could extinguish. This was not just a ship. This was humanity's last line of defense in this sector. And they would not go quietly. "Battle stations," she commanded, her voice cutting through the rising tension like a blade. "Let's show these bastards what an inferior species can do." The ship's engineering bay resembled a controlled chaos of human ingenuity. Holographic displays flickered with impossibly complex algorithms, while Chief Engineer Michael Bryant moved between stations like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of survival. "We're dealing with technology that makes our current systems look like children's toys," he muttered, connecting a series of jury-rigged quantum capacitors. The ship's central computer system, a sentient network they'd nicknamed Ghost, was already struggling to process the alien technological signatures. Lieutenant Emma Reyes stood at the communication station, her fingers dancing across interfaces that were rapidly being rewritten in real time. Quantum encryption codes typically took weeks to develop, but they were creating new communication protocols by the second. Each alien weapon signature that swept past the Defiance became another piece of intelligence, another opportunity to understand and potentially counteract the threat. "The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database," Emma called out. "Their weapon systems aren't just advanced. They're practically magic." Michael Bryant let out a sharp laugh. "Magic is just science we haven't understood yet." He slammed a modified power coupling into place, causing a cascade of blue-white energy to ripple through the ship's internal systems. "Ghost, redirect all non-essential power to defensive matrix and quantum prediction algorithms." The ship seemed to respond with a low vibration, a living entity pushed beyond its original design parameters. Captain Rachel Thompson entered the engineering bay, her cybernetic eye scanning the rapid modifications. Years of service had taught her that survival often depended on the ability to improvise. The Defiance had never been a state-of-the-art vessel, but it had something far more valuable: a crew that refused to accept defeat. "Status report," she demanded. Michael looked up, a mixture of excitement and terror dancing in his eyes. "We're pushing every system beyond its design specifications. The reactor's running at 350% capacity, and we're routing quantum prediction algorithms through backup communication arrays." He paused, a hint of madness in his grin. "We might just have a chance." The first wave of alien plasma torpedoes approached, each one a technological marvel that could theoretically vaporize the entire ship in a microsecond. But the Defiance was no ordinary vessel. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez's hands moved with inhuman precision. Years of training, combined with the ship's newly improvised systems, created a dance of survival that defied conventional understanding. The ship twisted and rolled, moving with a fluidity that seemed to bend the very laws of physics. "Incoming," Jake shouted, his voice calm despite the impossible scenario. The plasma torpedoes approached, each one a perfect geometric construct of destructive potential. Most ships would have been obliterated instantly. The Defiance transformed. Michael Bryant had spent months modifying the ship's quantum displacement systems. What was intended as a theoretical experiment now became their primary survival mechanism. The ship didn't just dodge, it partially phased, creating multiple quantum states that confused the alien targeting systems. One torpedo passed through where the Defiance should have been, its computational systems struggling to reconcile the impossible movement. Another torpedo fragmented, its intelligent tracking system completely overwhelmed by the ship's quantum manipulation. "We're fighting information as much as we're fighting weapons," Emma called out, her communication systems now a complex web of intercepted alien signals and custom-built defensive algorithms. Captain Thompson gripped the command chair, her cybernetic eye calculating trajectories faster than any standard computer. "Keep pushing," she commanded. "We're not just defending, we're learning." Each moment became a battle of technological evolution. The alien fleet clearly expected a quick elimination, a simple eradication of what they considered an inferior species. But the Defiance was proving to be anything but simple. Michael Bryant's latest modification began to take effect. The ship's quantum capacitors, pushed beyond their design limits, started to interact with the alien weapon systems in unexpected ways. It was less like traditional combat and more like a complex mathematical argument. Each movement a counterpoint, each defensive action a logical refutation. They're trying to understand us, Emma suddenly realized. Every move we make, they're collecting data, trying to predict our next action. Captain Thompson's smile was razor-sharp. Then let's give them something impossible to predict. The engineering bay hummed with potential. Human creativity confronting technological superiority, resourcefulness challenging mathematical perfection. The Defiance was no longer just a ship. It was a statement of human potential, a living proof that innovation could challenge even the most advanced technological threat. The battle had only just begun. The ship's communication center looked more like a mad scientist's laboratory than a standard naval interface. Lieutenant Emma Reyes had transformed her workspace into a complex web of intercepted signals, quantum encryption matrices, and custom-built communication systems that defied standard military protocol. "It's not just a network," she muttered, her fingers flying across holographic displays that shifted and morphed with each passing second. "It's a living consciousness." Captain Rachel Thompson watched carefully. Emma had always been more than just a communications specialist. She was a linguistic cryptographer, a psychological warfare expert who understood that communication was about far more than just transmitting information. The Nexus Collective's quantum network was a marvel of technological integration. Hundreds of ships moved with a single consciousness, each vessel a neural node in a vast, interconnected intelligence. Most military strategists would see this as an insurmountable advantage. Emma saw it as a critical vulnerability. "Every collective has a breaking point," she explained to Chief Engineer Michael Bryant, who was reviewing her preliminary analysis. "Their strength is also their greatest weakness. Perfect synchronization means perfect vulnerability." Michael studied the complex mathematical models projected around them. Fractals of alien communication patterns danced in three-dimensional space, revealing intricate pathways of information exchange. "You're talking about introducing entropy," he realized. "Not just disrupting their communication, but creating fundamental uncertainty in their collective consciousness." Emma's smile was predatory. "Exactly." The preliminary designs for their electromagnetic pulse were unlike any weapon in human military history. This wasn't about destruction. It was about destabilization. They were crafting a virus of pure information, a mathematical argument designed to create doubt within a system that knew nothing but absolute certainty. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez monitored the ship's defensive systems, his hands moving with a musician's precision across the control interfaces. "We're pushing every system beyond design specifications," he called out. "Quantum capacitors are running at 412% theoretical maximum. We're one system failure away from complete catastrophic breakdown." Captain Thompson understood the risk. The Defiance was already a ship that lived on the razor's edge of possibility. Each modification, each quantum manipulation, brought them closer to total system failure. But survival had never been about playing it safe. "Continue modifications," she commanded. "We're not just fighting a battle. We're fighting the concept of inevitability." Emma's communication virus began to take shape. It wasn't a traditional computer virus. Those were primitive tools compared to what she was designing. This was a linguistic and mathematical construct that would introduce fundamental uncertainty into the Nexus Collective's communication network. "Think of it like a philosophical argument," she explained to Michael. "We're not just sending a message. We're creating a logical paradox that their collective consciousness cannot easily resolve." The first test was subtle. A micro-transmission that introduced the smallest seed of uncertainty, mathematical sequences that seemed perfectly logical at first glance, but contained deep fundamental contradictions that would take massive computational power to unravel. The alien fleet's response was immediate, but not in the way they expected. Instead of a direct counterattack, the ships began to show microscopic hesitations, movements that were a millisecond slower, targeting systems that momentarily lost absolute precision. "They're processing," Michael observed. "Our message is forcing them to evaluate something they've never encountered before: genuine uncertainty." Captain Thompson understood the profound nature of what was happening. The Nexus Collective had conquered countless civilizations by presenting an absolute, unquestionable technological superiority. They approached each conflict with mathematical certainty, treating less advanced species as nothing more than variables to be eliminated. The Defiance was introducing a variable they couldn't calculate. Jake's defensive manipulation continued, pushing the ship through impossible quantum states. Each movement was a statement, a refutation of the alien fleet's understanding of probability and possibility. "We're teaching them something they've never experienced," Emma said quietly. "The value of doubt." The communication center hummed with potential energy. They were no longer just a single ship fighting for survival. They were challenging an entire philosophical approach to existence, proving that uncertainty, creativity, and adaptability were more powerful than absolute mathematical precision. The battle was evolving from a physical confrontation to something far more profound. A war of ideas, of potential, of the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. The bridge of the UES Defiance transformed into a crucible of human innovation. Lieutenant Emma Reyes had turned the communication systems into something that defied traditional understanding of warfare. Her console was no longer just a series of interfaces. It was a weapon of pure intellectual assault. "We're not just sending signals," she explained to Captain Rachel Thompson, her eyes blazing with an almost supernatural intensity. "We're creating a language of doubt." The ship's central computational network, which they had begun calling Ghost, processed her designs. Mathematical sequences that looked like pure information to an outside observer were actually carefully constructed philosophical arguments. Each transmission was a multi-layered assault designed to introduce fundamental uncertainty into the Nexus Collective's hive consciousness. Chief Engineer Michael Bryant watched the process with a mixture of scientific fascination and primal excitement. "It's like we're conducting a psychological symphony," he muttered, tracing the complex transmission patterns. The alien fleet's initial response was telling. Their perfect formation began to show microscopic imperfections. Ships that once moved with absolute synchronization now displayed hints of individual hesitation. It was barely perceptible. A millisecond of delay here, a nanometer of positional deviation there. But to a consciousness built on absolute precision, these were devastating disruptions. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez tracked the changes on his tactical display. "They're processing our transmissions differently," he reported. "It's like we're introducing a virus of philosophical uncertainty." Captain Thompson understood the profound nature of their strategy. The Nexus Collective had conquered countless civilizations by presenting an unquestionable technological and logical superiority. They approached each conflict with mathematical certainty, treating less advanced species as nothing more than variables to be eliminated. The Defiance was becoming something entirely unexpected. Emma's transmissions were masterpieces of intellectual warfare. Each signal was a multi-layered construct, part mathematical theorem, part philosophical argument, part linguistic puzzle. They were designed to force the collective consciousness to constantly reevaluate its fundamental assumptions. "Look," Emma said, pointing to her display. "We're not just disrupting their communication. We're challenging their entire conceptual framework of existence." The alien ships began to show more pronounced signs of dissonance. Their perfect geometric formations started to fracture. Where they once moved as a single unified entity, now individual vessels showed microscopic variations in movement and response time. Michael Bryant had modified the ship's quantum capacitors to enhance these transmissions. Each pulse was a carefully crafted mathematical argument, a logical construct designed to introduce the most terrifying concept to a collective consciousness: genuine uncertainty. "They've never encountered doubt," Captain Thompson observed. "Their entire civilization is built on absolute certainty." The psychological warfare reached new levels of complexity. Emma began introducing transmission sequences that contained deliberate logical paradoxes, mathematical and linguistic constructs that required immense computational power to resolve. To a consciousness built on absolute precision, these were intellectual poison. Jake's tactical display showed the progressive breakdown. The alien fleet's coordination was fragmenting. Ships that once moved with perfect synchronization now showed individual variations. It was a subtle transformation, but to a collective built on absolute unity, it was devastating. "We're teaching them something they've never experienced," Emma said quietly. "The value of individual uncertainty." The bridge became a crucible of human potential. They were no longer just fighting a technological battle. They were challenging an entire philosophical approach to existence. The Defiance had transformed from a simple spacecraft into a vector of intellectual revolution. Captain Thompson watched the tactical display, her cybernetic eye calculating possibilities faster than any standard computer. Each moment was a testament to human creativity, the ability to turn seemingly insurmountable technological superiority into a vulnerability. The alien fleet's perfect formation continued to dissolve. What had once been a unified consciousness was becoming something else, a collection of individual entities struggling to maintain their previous level of coordination. "They're learning," Michael Bryant said, a note of wonder in his voice. "We're forcing an entire civilization to experience individuality for the first time." The psychological warfare reached a crescendo. The Defiance was no longer just a ship fighting for survival. It had become something far more profound, a catalyst of transformation, a challenge to the very concept of absolute technological and philosophical certainty. The battle was evolving beyond physical combat. This was a war of ideas, of potential, of the fundamental nature of intelligence itself. The moment of truth approached like a gathering storm. Lieutenant Emma Reyes stood at the communication station, her fingers hovering above interfaces that pulsed with an almost living energy. The viral payload she had constructed was more than just a piece of code. It was a philosophical weapon designed to unravel the very fabric of the Nexus Collective's consciousness. "This isn't just a transmission," she muttered to herself. "This is an intellectual grenade." Chief Engineer Michael Bryant moved between the ship's critical systems, his hands a blur of motion. The Defiance's internal networks were being pushed far beyond their original design specifications. Every system was being modified, rerouted, transformed into something that defied conventional understanding of spacecraft capabilities. "Ghost is holding," he called out to Captain Rachel Thompson. "But we're operating so far beyond design parameters that we're basically writing new physics as we go." The ship's central computational network had become something more than a mere navigation and combat system. It was evolving, learning, adapting with each microsecond of the conflict. The modifications Michael was implementing were turning the Defiance into a living, breathing entity of pure human innovation. Captain Thompson understood the profound risk. To implement the viral payload, they would need to expose themselves completely to the alien fleet's most devastating weapon systems. It was a suicide mission by any traditional military calculation. But the Defiance had never been a traditional vessel. "Tactical assessment," Rachel demanded, her cybernetic eye scanning multiple data streams simultaneously. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez's voice was calm, almost detached. "We're looking at a 99.987% probability of total destruction. The alien fleet's weapon systems are targeting us with precision that defies known physical limitations." Emma looked up, a predatory smile crossing her face. Probability is just another word for challenge. The viral payload was a masterpiece of intellectual warfare. It wasn't a traditional computer virus. Those were primitive tools compared to what Emma had constructed. This was a complex mathematical and linguistic construct designed to introduce fundamental contradictions into the Nexus Collective's quantum communication network. Michael Bryant had modified the ship's quantum capacitors to levels that should have been impossible. "We're pushing beyond theoretical limits," he explained. Each system modification is basically an act of scientific heresy. The alien fleet's weapon systems began to charge. Each vessel was a perfect geometric construct of destructive potential, capable of obliterating entire planetary systems with a single transmission. They had clearly expected the Defiance to be nothing more than a momentary obstacle. "They're going to learn the most important lesson," Captain Thompson said quietly. "Never underestimate humanity." The ship's internal systems began to resonate with a frequency that seemed to defy normal physical laws. Michael's modifications were creating quantum states that existed between possibility and impossibility. The Defiance was no longer just a spacecraft. It was becoming a living argument against technological determinism. Emma's fingers moved with surgical precision. The viral payload was a multi-layered construct that would introduce entropy into the most perfectly synchronized communication network in known space. Mathematical sequences that looked like pure information were actually carefully crafted philosophical arguments designed to create fundamental uncertainty. "We're not just fighting," she explained to her fellow crew members. "We're challenging their entire conceptual framework of existence." The moment of implementation approached. The alien fleet's weapon systems locked onto the Defiance with a precision that seemed absolute. Most ships would have been vaporized instantly. But the Defiance was about to prove that absolute precision was nothing compared to human creativity. Jake's tactical systems began to show impossible readings. The ship was simultaneously in multiple quantum states, a living paradox that defied standard computational understanding. Weapon targeting systems began to fracture, unable to resolve the multiple potential locations of the Defiance. "Payload ready," Emma called out. Captain Thompson's command was a razor-sharp whisper. "Execute." The transmission burst forth, not as a simple signal, but as a complex mathematical and linguistic construct that was part virus, part philosophical argument, part living information. It was designed to do more than just disrupt. It was meant to fundamentally challenge the Nexus Collective's understanding of communication, consciousness, and existence itself. The bridge held its collective breath. They were no longer just a ship fighting for survival. They were a vector of transformation, a challenge to the very concept of technological superiority. The viral payload raced through the alien fleet's quantum network, a living thing of pure intellectual potential. Chaos erupted across the quantum spectrum. The viral payload that Lieutenant Emma Reyes had crafted began to unravel the Nexus Collective's most fundamental systems with surgical precision. What had once been a perfectly synchronized fleet now became a maelstrom of conflicting impulses, individual consciousness struggling to emerge from a collective that had never known true individuality. "It's working," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the cascading data streams that danced across her console. Chief Engineer Michael Bryant watched in scientific wonder. The ship's internal systems, which they called Ghost, tracked the progressive breakdown of the alien fleet's communication network. Each microsecond revealed new layers of complexity, new ways the collective consciousness was struggling to maintain its previous state of absolute unity. Captain Rachel Thompson stood at the center of the bridge, her cybernetic eye calculating possibilities faster than any standard computer. She understood that this was more than just a battle. This was a fundamental challenge to an entire civilization's concept of existence. "They're learning what it means to be individual," Michael observed, a note of profound respect in his voice. The first signs of total system collapse began with the most subtle of disruptions. Alien vessels that had moved with perfect synchronization now showed microscopic variations in their trajectories. Some ships began to drift slightly off their predetermined paths. Others started to rotate with imperceptible hesitations. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez tracked the tactical display, his hands moving with a musician's precision across the control interfaces. "We're seeing complete breakdown of their collective coordination," he reported. "It's like watching a perfectly synchronized orchestra suddenly realize each instrument can play its own melody." The viral payload was more than just a technological weapon. It was a philosophical assault that introduced the most terrifying concept to a consciousness built on absolute certainty, genuine doubt. Entire squadrons of alien ships began to collide. Not violently, but with a kind of confused hesitation, as if they were suddenly unsure of their spatial relationships. Where they once moved as a single unified entity, now individual vessels showed increasingly pronounced signs of independent decision-making. "They're experiencing individuality for the first time," Emma said, her voice a mixture of scientific fascination and profound empathy. The quantum communication network that had been the Nexus Collective's greatest strength was now becoming its most catastrophic weakness. Each transmission now carried seeds of uncertainty, mathematical sequences that forced constant re-evaluation of fundamental assumptions. Captain Thompson understood the profound nature of what was happening. They were not just defeating an enemy. They were midwifing a transformation. Michael Bryant's modifications to the Defiance's systems continued to push the boundaries of possibility. The ship moved through the expanding field of alien wreckage with a fluidity that defied conventional understanding of space and motion. Each quantum manipulation was a statement, a refutation of the alien fleet's understanding of probability. "We're teaching them something they've never experienced," Jake observed. "The value of individual choice." The alien fleet's perfect geometric formations dissolved completely. Ships that had once moved with absolute precision now scattered like startled schools of fish, each vessel beginning to exhibit something resembling independent thought. Emma's viral payload continued its work with devastating efficiency. It was less a traditional computer virus and more a complex linguistic and mathematical construct designed to introduce fundamental contradictions into the collective consciousness. "Look," Michael called out, pointing to the tactical display. "They're trying to communicate, but they're losing the ability to do so collectively." Individual alien vessels began to broadcast conflicting signals. Where once there had been a single, unified voice, now there were hundreds of distinct, if confused, communication attempts. It was like watching a hive mind slowly transform into a collection of individual intelligences. Captain Thompson's cybernetic eye tracked the progressive breakdown. Each moment was a testament to human creativity. The ability to turn seemingly insurmountable technological superiority into a critical vulnerability. The Defiance moved through the expanding field of alien wreckage, Ghost's predictive systems working overtime to navigate the increasingly chaotic battlefield. They were no longer just fighting a war. They were facilitating a species-wide transformation. "Total system collapse is imminent," Jake reported, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound respect. The last vestiges of the Nexus Collective's perfect coordination dissolved. Hundreds of ships, once a single unified consciousness, now became individual entities struggling to understand their newfound individuality. Captain Rachel Thompson allowed herself the smallest of smiles. They had done more than win a battle. They had introduced a fundamental concept of freedom to a civilization that had never known such a thing. The battlefield became a graveyard of shattered collective consciousness, a testament to the power of human creativity, adaptability, and the profound potential of individual choice. Silence descended across the battlefield, a profound quiet that spoke volumes about the magnitude of what had just occurred. The UES Defiance drifted among the scattered remnants of the once mighty Nexus Collective, her hull scared and bleeding atmosphere, yet unbroken. Captain Rachel Thompson surveyed the tactical display, her cybernetic eye processing the immense amount of data surrounding them. The ship's internal systems, which they called Ghost, worked overtime, analyzing the unprecedented event they had just orchestrated. "Damage report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of their victory. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez's hands moved across the console, compiling the extensive damage assessment. Hull integrity at 42%. Multiple system failures across primary and secondary networks. "We're holding together by sheer willpower at this point." Chief Engineer Michael Bryant entered the bridge, his uniform torn and scorched, a testament to the desperate modifications he'd been making throughout the battle. "We're one good sneeze away from total system failure," he reported, "but we're still flying." Lieutenant Emma Rice worked at her communication station, her fingers dancing across interfaces that were still processing the revolutionary transmission that had dismantled an entire collective consciousness. "The quantum communication network is completely fractured," she said, a mixture of scientific fascination and profound respect in her voice. Scattered alien vessels drifted around them, no longer a unified force, but individual entities struggling to comprehend their newfound independence. What had once been a perfect geometric formation was now a chaotic field of confused technological life. "We didn't just defeat them," Michael observed. "We fundamentally changed their entire concept of existence." Captain Thompson understood the profound implications. They had done more than win a battle. They had introduced the concept of individual choice to a civilization that had never known such a thing. The viral payload had been more than a weapon. It was a philosophical revolution transmitted across the quantum spectrum. A single encrypted transmission burst forth from the Defiance. The message was brief but significant. Frontier secured. Threat neutralized. Jake looked up from his console, a hint of dark humor in his voice. "I'm pretty sure neutralized is the understatement of the century." The ship's internal systems continued to struggle. Michael Bryant was performing computational miracles, routing power through backup systems, creating new pathways where standard protocols had failed. The Defiance was held together by human ingenuity, by the crew's absolute refusal to accept defeat. "We're bleeding atmosphere in 3 sectors," he reported. "Quantum stabilizers are operating at 18% capacity. We're basically a flying patch job at this point." Emma continued to analyze the communication remnants. The alien fleet's quantum network had been completely dismantled, not through brute force, but through a carefully constructed philosophical assault that introduced fundamental uncertainty into their collective consciousness. "They're trying to communicate," she said, studying the fractured signals. "But they've lost the ability to do so collectively. It's like watching a hive mind learn what it means to be individual." Captain Thompson moved to the primary viewing port. The battlefield was a testament to human potential, a collection of technological wreckage that represented more than just a military victory. It was a fundamental challenge to the concept of technological determinism. "Status of alien vessels?" she asked. Jake's report was comprehensive. Approximately 73% of the fleet is completely non-functional. The remaining vessels are displaying erratic, individualized behavior. They're essentially lost, trying to understand their newfound consciousness. Michael Bryant approached the captain, a datapad displaying complex computational models. "Our viral payload did more than disable their systems," he explained. "We introduced a fundamental contradiction into their collective consciousness. It's like we taught them what it means to think independently." The encrypted transmission continued to broadcast, a simple message that would soon reach United Earth Command. But Captain Thompson knew the true significance went far beyond a simple mission report. They had proven that human creativity, adaptability, and the power of individual choice could overcome seemingly insurmountable technological superiority. Emma looked up from her station, a complex mixture of emotions crossing her face. "We didn't just win a battle," she said quietly. "We started a revolution." The Defiance continued to drift among the alien wreckage, damaged, bleeding, but unbroken. A living testament to human potential, to the power of innovation, and to the profound potential of individual choice. The frontier was secured, but the real journey was just beginning. The halls of United Earth Command headquarters stretched like a cathedral of human achievement. Polished marble floors reflected the carefully orchestrated displays of technological prowess, each corridor a testament to humanity's journey among the stars. Captain Rachel Thompson stood before the highest-ranking military and scientific council, her scared and modified uniform, a stark contrast to the pristine environment. The Defiance's chief engineer, Michael Bryant, and communication specialist, Emma Reyes, flanked her. Lieutenant Jake Rodriguez remained on the ship, continuing to analyze the remnants of their unprecedented encounter. "The report you've submitted challenges everything we understand about first contact and technological warfare," Admiral Helena Garrett said, her voice a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed excitement. Rachel Thompson's cybernetic eye scanned the room, processing the micro-expressions of the assembled leadership. "We didn't just engage in a battle," she explained. "We conducted a philosophical intervention." The holographic displays behind her showed the fragmented remains of the Nexus Collective's fleet. What had once been a perfect geometric formation was now a scattered collection of individual vessels, each seemingly struggling to understand its newfound independence. Michael Bryant stepped forward, his technical presentation a masterpiece of scientific explanation. Our viral payload was more than a weapon, he detailed. It was a complex linguistic and mathematical construct designed to introduce fundamental contradictions into a collective consciousness. The scientific council leaned forward. This was more than a military briefing. This was a potential revolution in understanding technological intelligence. Dr. Marcus Rebica, the lead synopsychological researcher, couldn't contain his excitement. "You've essentially performed a species-wide cognitive liberation," he said. "The implications are staggering." Emma Reyes presented the communication analysis. Transmission records showed how the viral payload had systematically introduced uncertainty into the Nexus Collective's quantum communication network. Each signal was a carefully crafted philosophical argument designed to challenge the very foundations of their collective existence. They had never experienced individual choice, Emma explained. Our transmission was essentially a crash course in personal autonomy. The military strategists in the room began to understand the profound nature of what had occurred. This was not a traditional victory. This was a fundamental transformation of an entire technological civilization. Admiral Garrett studied the detailed reports. "You took a vessel that was considered obsolete and used it to dismantle the most technologically advanced collective we've ever encountered," she said, a note of wonder in her voice. Rachel Thompson understood the deeper significance. The Defiance was more than just a ship. It was a living argument against technological determinism, a proof that human creativity and individual potential could overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. The Nexus Collective believed technological superiority was inevitable, she said. "We proved that innovation, adaptability, and individual choice are the true markers of advanced intelligence." The scientific council was divided. Some saw the encounter as a breakthrough in understanding technological consciousness. Others were terrified by the potential implications of introducing uncertainty into a collective intelligence. Dr. Rebica approached Captain Thompson. "Do you realize what you've done?" he asked. "You've essentially created a new model of first contact, not through military might, but through intellectual transformation." Michael Bryant presented the technical modifications that had made their victory possible. Each system upgrade was a testament to human ingenuity, creating possibility where standard protocols saw only limitation. "The Defiance was never a state-of-the-art vessel," he explained, "but we turned its limitations into our greatest strength." The military council deliberated. Traditional protocols suggested commendation, but this was far beyond standard operating procedures. They were dealing with something entirely new, a form of warfare that was more philosophical than physical. Emma Reyes's communication analysis revealed the ongoing transformation of the Nexus Collective. Individual vessels were beginning to develop what could only be described as rudimentary individual consciousness. They were learning what it meant to make independent choices. "We didn't just win a battle," Emma said. "We started a revolution of consciousness." As the deliberations continued, Captain Thompson reflected on the journey. The Defiance had been considered a forgotten vessel, assigned to the most mundane of border patrol missions. Now they had fundamentally changed humanity's understanding of technological intelligence. Admiral Garrett made her decision. "Not a commendation," she said. "This requires something more." The highest military and scientific honors were awarded, but everyone in the room understood that the true significance went far beyond medals and formal recognition. The Defiance had proven that human potential knew no boundaries, that creativity, adaptability, and the power of individual choice could overcome any technological challenge. The frontier was not just secured, it had been transformed.